If your sales team has more than a 40% close rate, that's actually a really big problem inside of your organization. In this video, we're going to break down what the actual root problem of having a 40% close rate is, why does this occur in the first place, and then how to go about solving 4 issues inside of your business having an overly high close rate. So number one, what is the root problem? A 40% close rate inherently and objectively, when you look at it, seems like a great thing. I'm closing 40% of my deals, I'm making a bunch of money, my salespeople are on fire. That's awesome. At its core, a 40% close rate is an indication that other parts of your business is wrong. And so the core issue that we're trying to address here is having a deep understanding as to what your metrics actually mean. For example, under your close rate, there's a bunch of different things that could be affecting it. Your price, your qualification process, your traffic source, your show rate sequences. There are a bunch of different things that could be dictating why your close rate is where it's at. Just because you see a 40% close rate doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good thing. For example, if I'm running paid versus organic, if I have a 40% close rate on organic, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just tells me to be weary when I move to paid. If I have a 40% close rate on paid, that tells me I need to raise my prices, or I need to lower my qualification process. Maybe I need to look into my sales reps' calls to see if they're actually making offers, why they're not making offers, what are they doing on the closing side, are they being ethical in their closing processes. Having a high close rate isn't necessarily the problem. The problem oftentimes is your failure to make decisions off the backside of seeing metrics like that. And so for example, if I have a high close rate, I need to know how to interpret what that actually means. Going back to the example we had before, is that a pricing issue? Is it a qualification issue? Is it a traffic source issue? Is it something with the show rate sequences? I need to figure out what's actually behind a very high close rate. And the same goes for every single metric in your funnel. And this comes down to another video on the channel. I'll link somewhere here about addressing bottlenecks. But when you go to determine what's wrong inside of your organization, the first thing you need to look at is your ROAS. If I have a 5x return on my ad spend, I'm just going to scale the campaigns if I'm running paid ads. If I'm at a 3x, well, then I need to look at what's going on. Is it something on the marketing front? Is it something on the sales front? My CPMs? Is it my click-through rate? Is it my opt-in rate? Same thing with sales. Is it my show rate? Is it my close rate? Is it my collection rate? What's the issue? So the principle in this scenario of a very high close rate is oftentimes that doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing. Now, organic versus paid, obviously your close rate is going to be higher. We encourage you to keep it higher because when you go to paid, it's going to naturally drop. And so you'll see where your actual close rate is when you start running paid ads. But all that a high close rate tells me, if you let that go on for an extended period of time, is you are not able to audit what the actual constraint or issue inside of the funnel is. So that brings me to the second part. Why does this typically occur? Well, there's a bunch of different reasons why interpreting your metrics may get skewed. Number one, laziness. If you run a business that's been built off organic content and you are inherently lazy, even if you don't realize it. When you run paid ads, you're forced to track your CPMs, your click-through rate, your impressions, your opt-in rate, your show rate to webinars, your close rate to webinars, your retention of pitch, your booking rate, your qualified application submission rate, your show rate to the calls, your close rate to the calls, your collection rate on the calls, all of those numbers broken down by funnel, broken down by rep, both on the setting and the closing side. And what running paid ads forces you to not be lazy. 9 times out of 10, if you have these issues, it's A, due to laziness when it comes to tracking. Number two, the other reason is you just don't know. If you don't know that having a high close rate can be a problem, how are you going to solve for it? If you have an operator or you've been doing this yourself and they're like, dude, we have a 60% close rate, things are going awesome. If you don't know any different, you're going to go, yeah, that fucking rocks. That is amazing. I love it. Let's do it. And so again, sometimes you just don't know. And that has nothing to do with you. If you're curious if there are some of these things wrong inside of your business, you can book a call below, speak to myself or a member of the team. We'll run you through everything. But again, sometimes you just don't know. And those are like the big two, is inherently you're lazy and you don't know the numbers, or you do know the numbers, but you don't know how to interpret them. At the end of the day, how do we actually go about solving this problem? And we'll go into the specific solutions for solving the close rate issue. But in general, let's say I have no idea whether my metrics are good or not. They look good, but again, I don't know. What we're going to do inside the organization is create what we call a financial model. And what this does is this allows us to map out all of our metrics: CPM, click-through rate, opt-in rate, show rate. Again, there will be more metrics to this: close rate, collection rate, average sale price, ad spend, of course. And what we're going to do is we're just going to model all of this out. Maybe we're spending $30K on ads. Maybe we've got $65 CPM. We've got a 2% click-through rate. We've got a 10% opt-in rate. We have a 70% show rate, 30% close rate, 80% collection rate, and our average sale price is $15,000. What I can then do is, if I model this out on something like Google Sheets or Excel, whatever you prefer to use, I can start playing with these numbers. So if I don't truly understand what's going on, I can just say, okay, what happens if I raise my CPMs? How does that affect everything? What happens if I drop my close rate? How does that affect everything? But again, you're going to model out different scenarios. So if I drop my close rate, what happens if I raise my average sale price? What happens if I raise my average sale price to 20K, or let's say 25K, and I drop my close rate 10%? How does that affect the model? What is the outcome on my ROAS? And all we're going to be doing is just playing with metrics to see what those thresholds are. Now, in general, 40% is a good indication as to what's going on and that there are problems. And again, we'll get into that in a second. But if you're sitting there and you go, I have no idea no idea how to determine what to solve for, first thing I'm going to tell you to do is take every metric in your funnel, model it out, take what your actuals are, and then create a scenario where you can begin tweaking to see what you need to increase, what you need to decrease, what happens if you do these at the same time. Is it a good result? Is it a bad result? And just by financially modeling and playing with these things, you'll start to get a good understanding as to what affects what inside of your organization and what you have flexibility with. And this brings me to the last part, which I kind of touched on a little bit earlier in terms of close rate. How do we actually solve for having an absurdly high close rate? So if I'm sitting at 40%, how do I know what to do in order to solve for this problem? Very, very simple. All I'm going to do is go back to what we talked about before, look at my pricing, look at my qualification process, look at my traffic source, and then look at show rate sequences. There are other examples, but we'll start with these. First thing I'm going to do in general with a high close rate is look at my traffic source. Is this a 40% close rate on cold or organic? If it's organic only, I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to say, cool, that's fine. It's still a little high, but I'd rather have that than a 20% and try to scale into cold. If it's a 40% on cold traffic, I'm going to go, okay, something's wrong here. Before I think about raising prices, what's going on in the qualification process? Before I go overhauling my entire business, are my setters or closers doing something to only put good leads on their calendar? And so from this, what I'll do is I'll look at my SDR calls or setter calls, and I'll look at my closer call recordings. And I'll look at, are they DQing early? Or let's say a closer is not making an offer because he doesn't think they'll close, so he doesn't track it, it doesn't mark it. All we're going to do is say, hey guys, you've got to let what you deem less qualified people come through the funnel. Here's why. And your closers have to go and close those people. If you run into issues where your closers are struggling to close them, and you know for a fact these are closable deals, sometimes as the owner, you have to step in and start closing yourself to break that narrative and say, hey, these deals are closable. We can close them. You guys are dropping the ball here and here. And then immediately you'll see an uptick in your closer's performance. So that's the first thing, is we're going to look at quality. Now, if everything looks good here and your setters are pushing the right leads through, your closers are pushing the right leads through, everybody's talking to everybody, and you still have a 40% close rate, good for you. Now you get to say, okay, cool, let me raise my prices. The other thing you're going to want to do is with the show rate stuff, see if this is affecting your qualification process as well. So total side note, when I go into the qualification, not only am I going to look at the sales process, but I'm also going to look at the show rate sequence and see if people are canceling after they consume a certain email. So let's say I have an email about ABC thing and it speaks to a higher level individual, and the person goes, I'm not in that boat yet, and they cancel the call, or they consume that email and you get a bunch of cancels after that email is consumed. You know, okay, cool, I've got to go get rid of this, change it up, do something to get people to show back up to the calls. So that could be the other thing affecting it. And your show rates could look good. It might just be they're causing certain leads to disqualify themselves for no reason. So that's the other thing. If these two look good, then we're going to raise prices. Here's the secret to raising prices though. If I go to raise my price, we're going to come back to this financial model scenario. Let's say I go to 20K, and let's say this causes the close rate to drop 10%. Am I making more money? Does my ROAS go up? That's it. If this price increase and this expected decrease in close rate does not cause the amount of money I'm making to increase, then what it's telling me is there's something else inside of the funnel that needs to be tweaked. And all we're looking to do is make sure that the increase in price correlated with a decrease in close rate will make us more money. And there's two ways to do this. You can either raise prices aggressively, see your close rate tank and maybe cause a little contraction, or you can incrementally raise prices, see what happens when they stabilize, raise prices, see what happens, raise prices. So it really depends. I can either take big leaps or I can take smaller leaps to see what the impacts are. It's up to you in terms of your risk tolerance. Obviously, the more risk you take, the faster you will see success, the faster you'll win, but also the more risk you take, the faster you can also collapse. So it's just being aware of those. But that's really it, guys. And if you're curious, like, hey, there's a couple of metrics inside my funnel. I don't know if they're right. I don't know if they're wrong. I don't know what I need to be doing in this situation. So link below, you can book a call, speak to myself or the member of the team. We'll run you through everything you need to know about your current situation, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and how to go about scaling your business based on what your metrics are telling us. So make sure you book that call. But again, guys, very, very simple. If you have a 40% close rate, the root problem of having that high of a close rate is 9 times out of 10, you just don't understand what your metrics actually mean. And just because one looks good doesn't necessarily mean it is a good thing. Why does this occur? Same thing I just said. If I don't know how to interpret my metrics properly, I will not know what's good and what's not. And I can be getting lied to by my agency or my operator where they're saying, hey, you got a 99% show rate, bro. You're doing amazing. Is this organic traffic? Is this paid traffic? If it's paid, oh my God, you are a god. But also, why is this happening? Are we overqualifying on the front end? Are we DQing people that would buy from us just because we want to have a super high show rate? It occurs because you need to be able to dig into the metrics and see what's going on. And then in terms of how to solve it, anytime you want to tweak something, just model it out. List out all the metrics that come with it, tweak the metrics, tweak where they're at. From there, you can figure out what you need to change, what improvements need to be made to then make the decision and go and scale. I hope that helped, guys. Like I said, there's another video on the channel you can check out. I'll link it somewhere about the whole bottleneck analysis process. A 40% close rate isn't always a good thing. Sometimes it means there are things that can be improved inside of your organization. Hope that helps, and I will see you in the next one.